Welcome to the 6th Blue Forge Group monthly open mic. My name is Max DeMarco. I'm an artisan working with 3 of Blue Forge's 4 divisions and a full-time on-site volunteer. Blue Forge Group is an entirely volunteer-run 501c3 nonprofit founded in 1989 to educate and empower artisans who've been marginalized by the mainstream. Our artisans couldn't be more different. They might not always get along on social media, but when they gather under the Blue Forge name, the art always comes first. Tonight, we'll hear from artisans from Blue Forge Films and Blue Forge Press. They'll each step into the spotlight of the Black Box Studio here on the Blue Forge campus and earn this month's open mic badge, created by actor and illustrator Faith DeMarco. Without further ado,
hi, my name is Jennifer DeMarco, and since 1989 I have worked with a Blue Forge Group as an on-site volunteer. I volunteer with Blue Forge Films, Blue Forge Press, Blue Forge Sound, and Blue Forge Gaming, so all 4 of Blue Forge's divisions. But today I wanted to talk to you guys about Blue Forge Sound and one of my albums. I actually do albums with Blue Forge Sound in 2 different genres, with electronic dance music, EDM, and also with original harp music. And this album, The Prodigal Songs, is original harp songs. One of the things that I really enjoy about my harp albums is that they actually started because I was making harps from scratch. And I was so fascinated by this, and before I would sell each harp, I would play a little original tune, just kind of make something up from what I was inspired by, the tuning, the open tuning of the harp. And I would make a little sample so that I could put up a little sample as I was selling the harp on, social media or eBay or something like that. So this is one of the albums, and the thing that was kind of cool about this album is there's a particular song on this album called Joshua's Travel Log, and a music video was made for this song that is all about a little girl who's trying to do her homework, and her mom is just yelling at her, why can't you get this right? And, oh, my badges just fell off. Why can't you get this right? And, you should be doing better. And finally the little girl just slams down her pencil and she runs outside and she makes herself cardboard wings, and she is running through a field and just searching, hoping, wishing for some kind of freedom. And then we flash forward and we see that little girl all grown up, and at the end of the music video we see that she has become a pilot. And I loved that interpretation of the song. There are no lyrics, it's just an original harp composition, but I loved that interpretation of the song. I loved seeing kind of classical music, folk music expressed in a music video. So that's what I wanted to actually share with you guys today. And so here is the music video for my song, Joshua's Travel Log, from The Prodigal Songs. Thanks.
I'm Bree Indigo, and I have been a volunteer with Blue Forge since about 2008. I've worked primarily with the press and the film and the sound divisions, and today I'm going to be sharing from Rise Reclamation, which came out last year, a few of my entries, though I have several more in here that I really love. So this one was really tricky to choose, but these are 3 that I really love. I'm going to be reading off of slightly larger paper. The first one is called Wildflower Phoenix. I have never been a rose, elegant and graceful like our daughter, beautiful but sharp. Nor am I a sunflower, tall and radiant, begging to be seen, casting shadows on anyone in its path. I am the ivory, peach-leaved bellflower that lives along the path on the edge of the drop-off, growing where I can, surviving where I must, and thriving in your garden. I am the sweet pea you plucked and pressed to keep forever, my petals a deep blush. I am the wildflower, growing unattended, along the chain link, in ditches and gutters, through cracks in the sidewalk, in riotous bloom, wherever you find me. Returning to the earth at the end of autumn, only to reseed and grow new again, each spring, stronger and wilder than before. Cardamom Tesseract. I am standing in our kitchen, dicing apples that grew just outside our bedroom window. Our first true harvest in at least 16 years. The cauldron boils, spices fill the air before the apples even begin to cook. Cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, ginger, and cardamom. And I pause, lifting the small jar to inhale, and I am knocked off my feet and into autumn of 2008. And I am there with you as you were here with me in August and everything after. Bonsai. You walk beside me in your cable knit sweater, gray like the overcast late autumn sky, tight auburn ringlets streaked with fine strands of silver, tucked under your black cabbie hat. And I think to myself how you look like a lighthouse keeper of yesteryear, though I bet you'd rather be a train conductor on the BNSF you love so much. Every year the county trims all the plants, weeds, shrubs, and trees, the rotary saw tearing through anything in its path, all along the roadside, over the drainage ditches, and around the power lines. And still, some plants survive the carnage, broken and splintered, forever changed by the violence they've endured, sending out new growth, blindly despite, or perhaps in spite. Your eyes, blue denim, like the Levi's you wear, don't see destruction. Your hands reach down, gently unbury her roots, fingertips carefully cradling frayed branches, finding beauty in her mangled form and strength in her resilience. With a firm but tender tug, she comes free under your touch. Broken, ripped, and frayed by time and the machine that is our post-industrial capitalist life, lying in the ditch, unvalued and abandoned, you saw the promise of her potential and found not a weed, but a bonsai. And I think I misspoke. I think there are 4. Fantastic. The final is called Phoenix Rising. I feel the graveyard dirt pressed against my lips every time I dare open my mouth to speak. I am exhausted by rooting for the anti-hero. I find myself stuck in the midnights of my discontent, haunted by ghosts I can't seem to shake. Nora and Chester and Dave, whispering lies, as I lie in the earth, telling me I'm only running from a self-fulfilling prophecy, and there are things we can have but not keep. And 16-year-old me holds up the bottle of pills I swallowed, and then woke up alone, no one the wiser. But the ghosts misunderstand me. My remains buried 6 feet under, the rotted pieces cut away, excised to save the rest of me. The transformation from pupae to butterfly is always glorified, but no one ever wants to hear of the exquisite pain inside the chrysalis, the disillusion of self, a debt to be paid. For metamorphosis, Through fire and flame, I fight to stay here, and this darkness is not my ending. This phoenix is rising.
I'm Pauline Ugalde, and I'm an artisan at Blue Forge Press and the director of the audio show adaptation of my first novella thesis for Blue Forge Sound. For my open mic presentation for June 2026, I'll be discussing how being a visually impaired person has impacted how I portray violence, especially extreme violence, while writing thesis. I will cover the methods visually impaired people use for independent living and how they have influenced my writing, how I used language specificity to create the level of detail that I myself would want in the media that I consume, and to the extent that I used violence and gore to portray the themes in the story. First off, I'll talk about two methodologies that visually impaired people use in independent living. The first is orientation and mobility, also known as O&M. This enables blind people to get around without needing sighted assistance. O&M instructors who are sighted people themselves with experience in teaching blind people, including having accumulated a specific amount of hours blindfolded and navigating with a white cane themselves, use terminology like cardinal and ordinal directions, the hour hand positions on an analog clock, with a degree of specificity necessary to describe a location. Geometric terms like describing people or objects as being parallel, perpendicular, or tangential to each other, and so on, which will be relevant in the next section regarding language specificity, the time-distance relationship for walking between locations. The second methodology is audio description, or AD. Sometimes it's also called the Descriptive Video Service, or DVS. The objective of AD is to describe film, television, or other forms of art, combining cinematic language or terminology specific to the field of art being discussed and literary language to give them enough information to not necessarily enjoy the work, but to come away with their own experience of the work. And most important of all, the AD text itself and the voice acting aren't supposed to prescribe emotional intent that the author did not intend, or even if they did intend it, onto the work. The second section of my presentation discusses language specificity in two specific ways. The first is terminology from niche fields like weapon design, anatomy, and physiology, and the second section discusses using terminology from video games, specifically fighting games like the Super Smash Bros. Series, which is a 3D fighting game, in particular the installments on the Wii U, Nintendo 3DS, and Nintendo Switch, where even text-only descriptions on the wiki describe characters and objects moving in 3D space without necessarily assuming that a sighted person using the wiki will consult any visuals. And the second video game, which informs my language specificity, is Celeste, which is a 2D platformer. The main source I used to not only describe techniques from the game that the cast uses in thesis, but informed how I described environments and fight scenes, but especially traversing such chaotic environments, is a YouTuber called Average Imposter, who has created a series describing the mindset and tangible techniques players would need to complete the game, increasingly tight time thresholds. Both the Super Smash Bros. Franchise and Celeste though they are visual in nature, demand that players train muscle memory, and they can't rely on visuals alone, which has proved invaluable for me. Also, depending on which terms characters use, it can highlight both their personality and their expertise in that field without breaking the flow of the story. Lastly, I'll discuss the extent to which I used violence and gore in Thesis and how I portrayed it when I did so. In short, I used all of the fields of expertise I've described to add specificity to the causes of and the actual descriptions of wounds and deaths like those you would see in slasher movies and in the Saw movies. I saw violence as a way to accentuate the themes in Thesis, especially if employing extreme violence or gore or graphic descriptions would do so more effectively than withholding that information, and this methodology runs counter to horror subgenres like elevated horror and found footage. In order to gauge whether a scene accentuated the themes enough to the appropriate extent, I would evaluate whether I would cringe, if not react aloud, if I read the scene I wrote in a publication I stumbled across on my own time. In essence, a completed scene, whether it's an environmental navigation scene or fight scene, culminates in combining literary language, niche language, and a fitting character reaction. So they react with the, if not the appropriate degree of severity, but in a realistic way for that character at the time, relative to their expertise in what they've just seen.
Hello, Marshall Miller here once again. I'm going to be reading from one of my science fiction works, and before I do that, I want to kind of set up the whole series because it's I call it my War and Peace of Alien Squid Invasion novels, because this highly intelligent alien race comes down here because we taste good, and they call us the Shah and the cephalopods, i.e. octopus/squids. And they have a very complicated culture, and after they come down here, the original plan was to maybe harvest some of us and leave. Well, they decide they really like our oceans, so a bunch of them are going to stay behind, and the other ones are going to go back to the home world and take a new strain of meat, us humanoids, back there, because the previous strain of humanoids had caught this weird disease that they brought back from their starfaring and had destroyed them as pretty much as a meat source. And that's how they wound up here on Earth. So of course they took over all of the coastal areas because they're seagoing. They are amphibious, so they can't come up on land, and that's a whole other sub-story of the whole species. If you read the book, and everything goes in quite into detail of their culture. So all of us humans have fled to the interior, and we formed a military. We're trying to fight back, trying to figure a way to kick them off of our planet, things like that. And amongst those are a lot of disparate people. Like we wind up having former Russian spies who then become romantically involved with a Marine officer, Torben, and they wind up getting married, and she winds up getting pregnant. Well, part of the problem with the pregnancies is these aliens have been running around screwing with their genome, and so most women now are being pregnant with twins because of the aliens screwing around with us. They basically treat us like cattle or dogs. In other words, they think it's perfectly okay to try to turn us into a different kind of breed, species. So, long story short, Alex, the former Russian spy, is now pregnant with twins. She is stuck at home. The aliens have also brought down a creature they call eaters that they basically use as sport creatures that they used to hunt in their home world. And one of their, shall we say, less than intelligent creatures, lords, brings these down here and they start breeding like wildfire. But there's also some ulterior actions going on here, and that's where this starts. Alex is home in the housing area of Malmstrom Air Force Base, now Malmstrom Military Base in Montana. And she's stuck at home because she's pregnant with what she calls the trolls in her stomach, these twin boys. There is a special dog, which is based on a canine dog that I knew personally when I was in the Air Force. So this is based on an actual being that existed. And so whenever I read about Fuzz, I have a tendency of getting a little bit of emotional because he's the epitome of what dogs are to humans, is what it boils down to. So Fuzz is home with Alexandra. Fuzz's mistress is Alexandra is one of her best friends. She's a former child warrior. And so they've left Fuzz at home because Alexandra's husband, Torben, and Abigail are out training new officers. So that's where this scene begins, is a house in the housing area in Malmstrom Air Base. It was 4 days after the highly successful Oktoberfest. Abigail and Torben were at work training a base of new officers on the fine art of killing. Alex was stuck at home, looking to her own eyes more like a beached whale every day. She wished the twins could be magically transported from her abdomen to the bassinets that they had found for them. Alex was in the kitchen in her part of the duplex, under the watchful eye of Fuzz. The large canine took his task of guarding the pregnant human quite seriously. When he was alone with Alex, a knock on the door meant Fuzz was there before Alex could be, getting between her and any potential threats. Right now, Alex was cooking a turkey, supposedly practicing for Thanksgiving. Actually, it was an easy way to have a large amount of protein on hand to keep the trolls in her stomach happy. They demanded a lot of extra calories. Fuzz was always spoiled by Alex with scraps and snacks out of Abigail's sight. "What good is having a big beastie around if I cannot spoil it?" she asked Fuzz. He thumped his tail once. The weather was cooler, with chances of snow in the forecast. For a Russian living in Siberia the last few years, it was nothing. Alex laughed at how concerned even some native Montanans became at the first hint of snow. A fire, or some heat source, some vodka, some potatoes and borscht. A warm body to curl up next to. That is all you need, Fuzz. The dog always gave her someone to talk to when home alone. She was not used to this imposed exile due to her condition. She was not at all the type of woman ready for mahjong games with the ugly pregnant women eating coffee cakes. She was a trained spy, damn it. What did she have in common with the other dependent wives? She had been initially angry about Abigail confronting that scavenger and dragging Torben into a nasty fight. But when she found out what had happened in Evanston, Alex had told Abigail, "Next time, wait until I have given birth. I would love to cut that one's nuts off." As Scarman and the one named Baker had disappeared again, she might still get that chance. Torben had tried to get all big brother with Abigail, but Alex came to her defense, explained the anger a woman feels when someone tries to manhandle her private parts. An argument ensued, leading to loud voices. Fuzz had walked in, letting out a low rumbling bark. The humans turned to look at him, and he was staring at them, a bit agitated. I think Fuzz is trying to tell us he does not like us arguing, Abigail commented. I think he sees it as adversely affecting the unity of the pack. Torben snorted. That's all we need. A four-legged combination, referee and marriage counselor. But they did stop arguing. The problem was that both Alex and Torben were hard-headed, stubborn, and opinionated. Alex sighed. They loved the hell out of each other, and so they always kissed and made up, sometimes ending up in bed. Alex's pregnancy had limited their lovemaking, which also frustrated her. She looked at her large stomach. Trolls, you had better hurry up and come out. As much as I love you, I miss the alone time with my husband. Fuzz chose that moment to walk to the double-paned sliding French doors to the backyard and gave her that "I need to go out" look. Okay, my beastie, let's get you outside. Let me know when you want back in. She walked to the back door and had to maneuver her stomach out of the way to open it. You'd better appreciate this, my husband. I'm getting tired of carrying around 2 bowling balls with my stomach. Fuzz went outside and Alex shut the door. She then went back to checking on a turkey and some stuffing she was experimenting with. A couple of minutes later, the sound of breaking glass came from the spare bedroom in the front of the house. What are you getting into, Fuzz? She asked as she waddled to the hallway. As she rounded the corner to the hallway and started down it, she remembered Fuzz was still outside as she'd heard him bark. Then, as it came out of the bedroom door, she saw the eater. Alex screamed in fear and anger. How dare this thing come into her home? Reflexes took over and she turned and grabbed for the hall closet door where a semi-automatic Saiga shotgun resided. Her large stomach with twins threw her balance off, and she started to fall but steadied herself with the doorknob. Then a clawed hand grabbed her left ankle. She fell, turning sideways, still holding onto the doorknob. She landed more on her back than her pregnant stomach. She looked and saw a teeth-filled maw not far from her captured foot. She howled, "No!" and began kicking with her feet at the face of the creature. Alex did not hear the breaking double-paned door glass, nor the sound of Fuzz rounding the corner. One moment the eater had her hold of her foot, pulling it towards its teeth. The next moment it was propelled into the drywall of the hallway. 150 pounds plus of enraged canine slamming his whole body weight into the alien creature. The eater was shoved completely into the wall and left a body-sized imprint. As the stunned creature started to slide out from the indentation, Fuzz latched his jaws on what passed as its throat. A twisting jerk of his shoulder and neck muscles, and Fuzz ripped the throat area out, blue-tinted blood splashing about. The eater slumped to the hallway floor. Then the budmate of the eater appeared. When Fuzz slammed into the first eater, time and space seemed to slow down, and Alex heard a voice from her memories. "Smirnov, you fat cow! Are you just going to lay there and die? Move!" During her spy training, she and the other trainees had suffered under the administrations of a training instructor who went by the name Stalin. No one knew his real name. But every day he said, "You may hate me now, but what and how I am teaching you will save your sorry ass someday. Now move!" Cut and scarred, no one knew how many people he had killed. They just knew he was very good at it. Propelled by the remembered voice, Alex was on her feet. She threw open the closet door and grabbed the Saiga 12-gauge shotgun. Fuzz had met the second eater head on, not giving an inch. He reared up on his hind legs, his front paws clawing at the humans. His teeth severed 3 clawed fingers of the eater's right hand as it tried to grab the war dog's muzzle. The creature let out a howling, screeching scream that Alex would never forget. It grabbed Fuzz with its other clawed hand, trying to pull the Fuzz's muzzle towards its own maw. Alex had the Saiga out and saw the open maw. She knew the eater could regurgitate highly corrosive stomach acid on its near prey, blinding and maiming it. Again she saw in her mind's eye Stalin slamming them around during bayonet training. Think you will always be able to easily shoot your enemy? Think again, you sorry fuckers. Now watch. You will thank me one day. Automatically, she went into a high throat thrust, up and over Fuzz, and into the left eye of the eater. She had no bayonet on the weapon, but she had a heavy steel barrel. She stabbed it into the eye, ochre eye liquid squirting out. As the eater began to scream again, she pulled the trigger. What passes the brain and skull of the six-limbed monster was expelled and out into the hallway. The recoil almost jerked the shotgun from her grasp, but pregnant or not, Alex was still a strong woman. She hung on, bringing it back for another thrust. It was not necessary. The eater collapsed like a deflated balloon. There was a sudden silence, other than the harsh breathing of Fuzz and Alex. No more creatures appeared. Alex plunked down next to the dog and threw her arms around his neck, blubbering in Russian, Ukrainian, and English. "You big wonderful beast, you. You saved me, and you saved my unborn children. You fantastic dog. I love you." Then she noticed the red blood that was not hers. She screamed and wailed as she realized her four-legged savior was hurt. She did not hear the front glass door window shatter, nor the voice of a brave young woman who managed to climb through the opening she had created. "Major Smirnoff," the young officer's wife, Sue Brown, called as she rounded the hallway corner and saw the screaming, crying woman, the bleeding dog, and the dead eaters. "Call 911, Alex screamed, then fainted.
Thank you for joining us for the 6th Blue Forge Group monthly open mic event. This video was filmed live on June 27th, 2026 and made possible by viewers just like you. Find out more about everything we do and how you can support an inclusive, non-partisan, art-focused nonprofit at www.blueforgegroup.org.